At a grocery store, a woman walked up to a single dad and said, "I know you." He was left stunned. The moment changed everything before he even realized it had begun. 1 second, he was standing in the cereal aisle, calculating prices in his head like a survival skill he had mastered over years of struggle. The next second, a quiet but certain presence stood beside him, and a woman's voice cut through the hum of the grocery store with a sentence that felt like a key unlocking a past he had buried deep. In that ordinary place, under fluorescent lights and between stacked boxes of discounted food, his world tilted. His hands froze. His breath caught. Because somehow, impossibly, someone claimed to know him. Before the story goes any further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen in everyday places, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest moments can change a life. He was a single father in his late 30s, the kind people rarely noticed unless they looked closely. His shoulders were always slightly tense, as if bracing against a wind no one else could feel. Years of responsibility had etched themselves into his face, not in bitterness, but in a constant seriousness that came from never having the luxury to fall apart. His son was 6 years old, small for his age, with a habit of clinging to the edge of the shopping cart and humming softly while his father shopped. That hum was the soundtrack of his life now, a fragile reminder of why he kept going when everything inside him felt tired. Life had not unfolded the way he once imagined. He had loved deeply, trusted fully, and believed that building a family meant permanence. But when his wife passed away after a long, quiet illness, permanence shattered into something far more fragile. Grief didn't come as loud sobs or dramatic breakdowns. It came as silence at the dinner table, as untouched mugs of coffee, as learning how to braid hair with trembling hands. It came as nights sitting on the edge of his son's bed, listening to breathing just to reassure himself that at least one piece of his world was still there. Money became another weight he carried. Hospital bills, reduced work hours, and the invisible cost of grief left him living paycheck to paycheck. Grocery shopping was no longer routine, it was strategy. He compared prices, skipped brands, and learned which aisles to avoid if his son was with him because explaining why they couldn't buy certain things hurt more than hunger. He told himself it was temporary, that strength meant endurance, and endurance meant not asking for help. That day in the grocery store felt no different at first. The cart was half full, his mental math running non-stop, his son distracted by colorful packaging. Then came that moment. A woman stood beside him, her presence calm but undeniable. There was something about her expression that unsettled him, not familiarity exactly, but recognition. The kind that sees past the surface. His heart raced as old instincts flared, the ones that come from being alone for too long and learning to protect your story. He turned to look at her fully, and time seemed to slow. She was around his age, maybe a little older, with tired eyes softened by warmth. She didn't smile brightly or act intrusive. Instead, she looked at him the way someone looks at a photograph they haven't seen in years. That was what frightened him most. He searched his memory desperately, running through faces, places, former lives. Nothing made sense. For years, he had kept his past tightly sealed. Before grief reshaped him, he had been someone else. Ambitious, hopeful, full of plans. He had volunteered at shelters, mentored kids who reminded him of himself, and once believed that doing good was a way of ensuring good would come back. After his loss, that belief faded. Survival replaced purpose. The world became smaller, limited to work, home, and whatever strength he could muster for his child. The woman didn't push or explain herself right away. She simply stood there, letting the silence stretch. His son looked up at her briefly, then back at the cart, unconcerned. Children, after all, sense safety instinctively. And somehow, she felt safe. As they spoke quietly, the truth unfolded slowly, like a wound reopening but this time without pain. Years ago, long before he became the man he was now, he had helped a stranger during the worst night of her life. He barely remembered it himself. A ride home in the rain. A small act of kindness when he himself had little to spare. To him, it was nothing. To her, it was everything. That night had been a turning point for her. She had been young, scared, on the verge of giving up entirely. His kindness had not fixed her life, but it had given her enough hope to keep going. Enough belief to try again. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, gone back to school, found stability, and learned to recognize grace when she saw it. She had never forgotten his face, even as years passed and circumstances changed. Standing there in the grocery store, he felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not pride, not guilt, but a quiet realization that his life had mattered in ways he never measured. While he had been drowning in loss, something good he once did had been growing somewhere else, unseen. As they talked, he felt exposed, as if the armor he wore daily had cracked. She noticed the careful way he counted items, the worn look of his clothes, the way his son stayed close. Without pity, she understood. And instead of offering sympathy, she offered presence. Over the next weeks, their paths crossed again and again, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by chance. She didn't try to rescue him. She didn't offer money or solutions. She offered something far rarer, acknowledgement. She reminded him, gently and persistently, that he was more than his grief, more than his exhaustion, more than the sum of his losses. His biggest struggle had never been being a single father. It was believing he was enough. Enough for his son. Enough for the world. Enough to deserve happiness again. Years of quiet sacrifice had convinced him that survival was the highest form of success. Hope felt dangerous. Slowly, things began to change. He found himself smiling more, not because life was suddenly easy, but because it felt lighter when shared. His son grew fond of her in the uncomplicated way children do, sensing kindness without explanation. The apartment felt less silent. The nights felt shorter. The memories of his wife no longer felt like anchors pulling him under, but like gentle reminders of love that had shaped him, not broken him. He started volunteering again, just a few hours a month at first. Helping others reminded him of who he once was, and who he still could be. The woman from the grocery store never took credit for any of it. She simply walked beside him as he rediscovered his own strength. There were setbacks, of course. Nights when guilt crept in, whispering that moving forward meant forgetting. Days when exhaustion returned full force. But now, when he struggled, he wasn't alone in it. He learned that healing wasn't a straight path. It was a series of small steps, often taken in ordinary places, like grocery store aisles. Near the end of this journey, standing once again under those same fluorescent lights, he realized something profound. That moment of recognition hadn't been about her knowing him. It had been about him finally remembering himself. Before this story ends, take a second to comment below. Share your thoughts, or tell us about a moment when a small act of kindness changed your life. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. As the story comes to a close, if this journey touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone you care about, and leave a comment. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive, reminding the world that even in our hardest seasons, we matter more than we know. Sometimes, the people who save us don't arrive with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, they show up quietly, between shelves of cereal and discounted bread, holding up a mirror to remind us that we were never invisible. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't being recognized by someone else, but finally recognizing the strength within ourselves.